$10 billion over the next 10 years to make it the year of the vaccines. What does that mean exactly?
Well, over this decade, we believe unbelievable progress can be made, both inventing new vaccines and making sure they get out to all the children who need them. We could cut the number of children who die every year from about 9 million to half of that if we have success on it. And the benefits there in terms of reducing sickness, reducing the population growth, reducing the it really allows the society a chance to take care of itself once you've made that intervention.
There's been a lot of scrutiny of vaccines recently, specifically childhood vaccines. There's been a lot of news about, is there a connection with autism, for example? What do you make of all that? Dr. Wakefield wrote a paper about this saying that he thought there was a connection. And there was lower vaccination rates as a result for a period of time in Britain than the United States. What are your thoughts?
Well, Dr. Wakefield has been shown used absolutely fraudulent data. He had a financial interest in some lawsuits. He created a fake paper. The journal allowed it to run. All the other studies were done, showed no connection whatsoever, again and again and again. And so it's an absolute lie that has killed thousands of kids, because the mothers who heard that lie, many of them didn't have their kids take either pertussis or measles vaccine, and their children are dead today.
Shut up! I've played nice for far too long. I'm so sick of your whining. It's not going to change anything anyway.
Please, you have to do something. You have to help me. Say something, make him tell me.
Stop talking to them! They can't help us. We have to do this together. Is any of it real? I mean, look at this. Look at it! A world built. Emotions in the form of pills. Psychological warfare in the form of advertising. Mind-altering chemicals in the form of food. Brainwashing seminars in the form of media. Controlled, isolated bubbles in the form of social networks. Real? You want to talk about reality? We haven't lived in anything remotely close to it since the turn of the century. We turned it off, took out the batteries, snacked on a bag of GMOs while we tossed the remnants in the ever-expanding dumpster. We live in branded houses, trademarked by corporations, built on bipolar numbers, jumping up and down on digital displays, hypnotizing us into the biggest slumber mankind has ever seen.
Well, Dr. Wakefield has been shown used absolutely fraudulent data. He had a financial interest in some lawsuits. He created a fake paper. The journal allowed it to run. All the other studies were done, showed no connection whatsoever. Again.
Some data to the Centers for Disease Control, to the Food and Drug Administration, to the National Institute of Health, and to the World Health Organization. So I analyzed popular vaccines. I analyzed vaccines from Merck, from Sanofi Pasteur, from GlaxoSmithKline, from Novartis, from Wyeth. I analyzed the measles, mumps, and rubella vaccine, the diphtheria, tetanus, and pertussis vaccine, the hepatitis vaccine, the pneumococcus, the influenza vaccine, I also analyzed the shingles vaccine, the chickenpox vaccine. I analyzed multiple vaccines from multiple manufacturers, and I even included multiple laboratories looking at the same vaccines, so that that I wasn't just looking at a single dose. So I developed a lot of data from multiple vaccines, multiple runs from multiple manufacturers, all vaccines involving gelatin and egg proteins. And what did I find? Well, I found that Merck's Zostavax vaccine, which is a shingles vaccine, is contaminated with glyphosate. I found that the Merck MMR2, the measles, mumps, and rubella vaccine, was contaminated with glyphosate. 2.9 parts per billion. Multiply that times the trillion molecules number, and it's really significant how many trillions of molecules are in a dose of that vaccine. I also analyzed the Merck ProQuad measles, mumps, and rubella vaccine, which has the varicella vaccine as well. The ProQuad also was contaminated with glyphosate. I analyzed the GlaxoSmithKline Energex B hepatitis vaccine. That vaccine was contaminated with Monsanto's glyphosate. I analyzed another Merck MMR2 vaccine, found 3.7 parts per billion glyphosate contamination in another run. I also reanalyzed the MMR-V vaccine from Merck. That was contaminated. The Varavax, varicella chickenpox vaccine from Merck, that was contaminated with glyphosate. The Zostavax, the shingles vaccine. You see the commercial on television, get this one done. The shingles vaccine, it's contaminated with glyphosate. I analyzed the Adacel diphtheria, tetanus, and pertussis shot vaccine given to children, the Sanofi Pasteur version of the DTaP, that's contaminated with glyphosate. I analyzed GlaxoSmithKline's hepatitis B recombinant vaccine. That's contaminated with glyphosate. I analyzed the flu vaccine, influenza, Fluzone Quad from Sanofi Pasteur, that's grown in chicken eggs. It's contaminated with glyphosate. What else? Another MMR vaccine, 2.963 parts per billion glyphosate. Most of the vaccines I analyzed are contaminated with glyphosate. Now we're exposing the population to this. This is why I sent a letter through my senator, Jean Shaheen, here in New Hampshire, to alert her and for her to alert the Centers for Disease Control, National Institute of Health, and the Food and Drug Administration. I also alerted the United Nations World Health Organization of the Americas, their Washington office. I alerted the director. In the past week, all of these agencies have received my data and a letter that I sent to our senator. I haven't heard back yet. I'm expecting to hear their response, but we have a serious problem in the global vaccine supply.
so, the people who go and engage in those anti-vaccine efforts, they kill children. It's a very sad thing because
Over a decade ago, Dr. Scott Montgomery and I put forward a hypothesis for MMR vaccine and autism. The age that you receive the vaccine influences the risk. This makes sense. For some infections like measles, the age of infection changes the outcome. We shared this hypothesis with vaccine officials, members of the Centers for Disease Control at meetings in Washington, D.C. and Cold Spring Harbor. A group of senior vaccine safety people at the CDC studied it. It panned out. We were right. At least partly. By November the 9th, 2001, nearly 13 years ago, senior CDC scientists knew that younger age of exposure to MMR was associated with an increased risk of autism. In 2004, they published, but they hid the results.
The lowest point in my career that I went along with that paper. And I went along with this. We didn't report significant findings.
MMR was declared safe.
The IOM has evaluated this issue back in 2004 and again most recently in 2011. And their conclusion, again, it was not just looking at the work that was done at CDC, but with a total body of evidence, was suggesting that vaccines and their components did not increase the risk for autism.
What Dr. Colleen Boyle, a co-author of that blighted paper, did not tell Congress is that she and her colleagues had deliberately concealed the autism vaccine link from the Institute of Medicine and the public. Ironically, they even received an award from the Secretary of Health and Human Services for this work. So troubling was the fraud that one of the CDC researchers broke ranks. Eventually he made contact with Dr. Brian Hooker, father of a vaccine-injured child with autism and a vaccine safety researcher.
I received a phone call out of the blue. It had a 404 area code, so I knew it was from the CDC. Lo and behold, it was. He had much to confess.
I would be ashamed of what I did. I have great shame now that I was conflicted, and I went along with it.
He had appointed me his priest. And when he appointed me his priest, then he started confessing. And we have had many, many phone exchanges. We've exchanged dozens of emails, and he has released quite compelling information regarding fraud and malfeasance in the CDC.
We didn't report significant findings.
Sent Hooker information that was never intended for public scrutiny. From their own data sheets dated 2001, Dr. Hooker analyzed the CDC's results, and he found the same risk for autism that the CDC scientists had themselves identified.
It's all there. It's all there.
He confronted.
He has expressed significant remorse for lying, for burying data.
I have great shame now when I meet families with kids with autism, because I have been part of the problem.
This week, August the 10th, 2014, Dr. Hooker published the real findings. A 340% increased risk of autism in boys receiving the MMR on time compared with those receiving it later. 13 years and tens of thousands of children later. But as I've said, Dr. Montgomery and I were only partly right. The risk of autism from early MMR vaccination was seen in black children, black boys. Those boys, for some reason, are at very high risk. Consistent with the CDC's own findings, the rate of autistic regression in black children is reported to be twice that in white children.
Oh my God, I cannot believe we did what we did.
Tuskegee Revisited. Scientist Dr. David Lewis, an international expert in whistleblowing and the detection of scientific fraud, reviewed the original CDC documents and the paper they published in 2004.
Probably this is the clearest case and the easiest case in which to answer. Is it fraud or is it an accident? Is it just an artifact of the study? That we're dealing with here clearly is fraud.
He knows that he's culpable for damage. He knows that he's culpable for permanent damage of a large, significant portion of the population of the United States.
The higher-ups wanted to do certain things, and I went along with it.
Dr. Frank DeStefano, Dr. Marshallin Jürgen Alsop, Dr. Colleen Boyle. They knew. They let it happen, and they could have stopped it. Michigan lawyer Alison Folmar, an award-winning advocate for children and parental rights, gave her reaction.
I feel, first and foremost, as a human being, betrayed. When you lose your faith and trust in humanity, how do you repair that? I mean, I don't really know what to say, to be honest.
He is very regretful about his involvement.
It's the lowest point in my career that I went along with that paper. I'm not going to lie. I basically have stopped lying.
You see, vile as the crimes of Stalin, Pol Pot and Hitler were, these men were not hypocrites. Their motives ambiguous or their rhetoric glazed with apparent caring and compassion. These men were not entrusted with the welfare of their victims. Their mottos did not include the words to save lives and protect. They were not running a mandatory program disguised as caring.